They booked a luxury cruise without me, but forgot one thing: I'm the one who owns the ship. I woke up before sunrise, same as always. You can take the girl out of the Navy, but those early hours still cling to you. Miami was quiet, too quiet. No texts, no calls, no group chats full of emojis and packing lists. Just the distant sound of waves rolling in against the harbor and the scent of fresh coffee drifting through my apartment. And then I saw it. Celeste's Instagram story. My younger sister. The family's golden child. A champagne flute raised high against a luxury ship's railing. Glittering ocean behind it. Her caption, Gentry Summit 2025. Only the real ones on board. My chest tightened. I hadn't gotten a single invite. Not even a courtesy call. This cruise was a tradition. 10 days sailing across the Caribbean. Coordinated outfits. White linen everything, cocktail parties, and curated Instagram moments for the perfect illusion of family unity. Except this time, I wasn't even a footnote. Last year, I was the one who brought the ship back during a storm that threatened to push her into shallow reefs. I had taken the helm when no one else knew what to do, recalibrated the tech, coordinated with the Coast Guard, literally saved the damn ship. But apparently, that wasn't enough to earn me a cabin this year. I tried to brush it off, pretend I didn't care. I even laughed to myself like it was just some oversight. But then, while waiting for my second cup of coffee to brew, I opened my laptop. And there it was, an email forwarded to me by accident, sent from Celeste's assistant to someone on the planning team. Subject, cabin assignments. Cabin 12, which used to be mine, had been reassigned to someone named Carter, Pilates coach. No need to mention Alana. I stared at those words for a full minute. No need to mention Alana. Like I was a ghost. Like I'd never even been part of this family. I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just stood there, coffee growing cold in my hand, a hollow silence spreading through my chest, like water leaking into a sealed room. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just exclusion. It was erasure. Clean, quiet, surgical. But if they thought I was going to beg for a seat, they'd forgotten something far more important than my name on a list. I didn't need an invitation, because I had the authority. I walked to the back closet, opened the safe, pulled out a thick navy blue folder. Inside, my valid maritime command certification, signed Naval Reserve contracts, operational control documents, all current, all legally binding. They'd been so busy curating a fantasy cruise they forgot the ship couldn't sail without someone like me. Someone authorized, someone trained, someone real. That night, before I turned out the lights, I opened my leather-bound notebook, the one that traveled with me through every deployment, and I wrote a single line. They erased me from the list. They forgot who signs the departure. And in that instant, something shifted. I wasn't just left behind. I had been underestimated, and they were about to learn what that mistake would cost them. But I had no idea just how far they'd already gone to keep me out. The next morning, I skipped the yoga mat and the boardwalk jog. My laptop was open before sunrise, surrounded by binders thicker than any guest list Celeste ever curated. Maritime law, Naval Reserve protocols, partnership clauses buried beneath paragraphs no one in my family ever bothered to read. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was verifying the truth. The Eleanor Blue wasn't just some party yacht. She was a hybrid vessel, dual certified for luxury cruises and advanced naval simulation. And deep in the operational charter, there was a clause I'd insisted on years ago. Any voyage utilizing the onboard simulation tech must be cleared by an actively certified technical captain. That captain me. I had never revoked my certification, never once stepped away from command. I simply stepped aside so they could pretend I didn't exist. But pretending has limits. Just to be sure, I called the one man who never sugarcoated a damn thing Commander Richard Odell, my old CO. He picked up after one ring. Alana. He barked voice like gravel dipped in Boston asphalt. What's wrong? Quick question, I said. If they launch without me using any military sim tech on Eleanor Blue, Are they violating protocol? Not if... He replied, they would be, flat out. Your name's still the primary tech authority on file. If they launch, they're breaking naval code. That's on them, not you. I hung up slowly, exhaling as I closed the folder on my desk. My own family, my blood, had tried to dance around federal regulations just to keep me off the ship. They weren't just ignoring me. They were trying to rewrite the entire narrative, erase the inconvenient truth that their glamorous, floating legacy still needed the daughter they couldn't bear to include. But the internet doesn't lie. I pulled up Celeste's latest press teaser. There she was, white jumpsuit glowing in the sunrise, leading what she called a Leadership at Sea influencer seminar. Sponsored content galore, hashtags, branded merch, even drone footage, right on the ship's training deck. The same deck installed under my technical supervision. They were still profiting off the systems I helped build while branding this as a private event to avoid compliance. I felt sick, and then I got angry. I walked into the closet and pulled out the navy blue uniform I hadn't worn in 2 years. My Ella Lanner blue captain's jacket, silver trim, rank stripes pressed and ready. The fabric still smelled faintly of salt and starch. I pressed it, polished the badge, tucked my signed command certificate into a folder. No texts, no threats, no posts, just quiet surgical preparation. I ordered a car to the port of Miami. When I arrived, sunlight hit the Eleanor blue like a coronation spotlight. She glistened tall, proud, buzzing with linen-draped guests and overpaid staff dragging pastel luggage across the pier. A massive banner fluttered above them. Gentry Summit 2025, the voyage of visionaries. What a joke. I stepped onto the dock. Security barely glanced at me. I walked straight to the credentials table, dropped the folder in front of a startled officer, and said, "They forgot I wasn't invited, but I was always authorized." He opened the file. Eyes widened. He reached for his radio, stuttering a bit. But I didn't wait. I walked onto that pier like it was mine because in every way that mattered, it was. A string quartet played something delicate and smug. Celeste stood at the center of the deck, flanked by Henry and Edward, her pearl gray dress shimmering like a crown jewel in a showroom spotlight. She raised a crystal glass and purred into a live mic. "Here's to tradition, legacy, and loyalty. We only sail with those who understand it." The crowd clapped. The string lights sparkled. And just as the moment peaked, a voice rang out across the dock, Captain Gentry on board. It was Chief Officer Carlton, an old comrade from my first training voyage. His voice sliced through the violins like steel. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." Time froze. Celeste's hand halted mid-toast. Henry dropped his glass. Edward stared at the sea like it had answers. I didn't flinch. I just adjusted my cap and stepped forward. But the moment I walked past them, uniform, crisp, silent, and sure, they realized they hadn't left me behind. They'd walked straight into my waters. I didn't pause for applause. I didn't smile for the live stream. I just walked past the glittering champagne towers, past the floral arches and camera drones, straight up the gangway toward the technical command deck. My boots echoed over the polished planks, the only sound that didn't feel scripted. No one dared stop me. The guards recognized me. My ID badge still scanned green, and Carlton stood aside like I was royalty returning home. In the control center, everything felt familiar. I flipped open my maintenance checklist and got to work. Fuel logs, emergency protocols, satellite syncs, all of it reviewed with the same quiet precision I'd once used during active deployment in the Pacific. At the bottom of the form, I signed my name. Alana Cole, Interim Captain. Cleared to sail. Just 7 words. But they held more weight than every empty toast made on that upper deck. I handed the clipboard to the chief engineer, gave a simple nod, and turned to leave. What I didn't know, someone on the staff had filmed the entire thing, quietly. From the far edge of the deck, the footage hit social media within the hour. By nightfall, it had exploded, captioned, remixed, and looped into a dozen viral formats. One version slowed the moment I signed my name. Another used orchestral music zooming in as I handed off the checklist. The top comment, "Wait, she's the captain. So the outcast is the reason this ship floats." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Let them piece it together themselves. Let the truth outpace the lies. By the time I reached the staff deck for dinner, the entire vibe of the cruise had changed. The air was thick, not with celebration, but with something else. Awareness. The guest list had laughed at me in private. Now they weren't sure where to look. I sat with the crew, folding chairs, paper napkins, engine hum in the background. It felt more like home than any family table ever had. One of the junior engineers, Sasha, nudged a chair toward me and whispered, "You belong here." I thanked her and took my seat. Across the deck at the main table, Celeste sat framed by flickering lanterns, a pearl gray dress hugging her curated perfection. Her eyes locked on me, sharp, calculating. She didn't make a scene, not right away. She waited until the second course, some ridiculous sea bass with truffle foam, before rising from her throne and walking across the deck like she owned the ocean itself. When she reached me, she leaned close, smile frozen on her face. "You really think you have the right to ruin our family's vacation?" I didn't rise, didn't blink. I took a sip of water, set my glass down, and replied, "I'm not on vacation. I'm on duty. On a vessel I'm authorized to operate." Her smile twitched just a hairline fracture in her porcelain mask, and then, as if the universe wanted to underline the moment the ship lurched. Subtle, barely noticeable, but I felt it, and so did the bridge crew. The speakers crackled. A calm but firm voice cut through the air, navigation deviation, 10 nautical miles off course. The dinner guests froze. Henry, always the loudest fool in any room, stood up and shouted, "This is why women shouldn't steer ships." No one laughed. Not even Edward. I didn't look at Henry. I stood and walked calmly to the nearest access panel, fingers moving without hesitation. Whoever had upgraded the nav interface clearly didn't know what they were doing. The military-grade system had been replaced with a commercial touchscreen model, flashy but buggy. Probably Celeste's idea. Easier to film, easier to sell, but not easier to sail. I bypassed the faulty tracking node, resynced the satellites, rebooted the override system. 7 minutes. That's all it took. I didn't announce it. I just returned to my chair, picked up my fork, and kept eating. But word travels fast on a ship. Sasha posted a quiet update in the crew's internal channel, "Captain Gentry just corrected course." That post was screenshotted, shared, reposted by a maritime blogger with 500,000 followers. His caption, "The woman they didn't invite just saved the ship they're flaunting." Comments poured in like high tide. "Captain Gentry is the only reason that boat's not in the Gulf. Outcast more like the only adult on board." Later that evening, as dessert trays clinked and the sky turned violet, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my father, Edward Gentry. He approached slowly, hands clasped behind his back, like he was inspecting a golf course not facing the daughter he hadn't spoken to in over a year. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "You should be sitting at the main table, with the family, where you belong." I looked over at Sasha and the others crew members who'd shared sandwiches held doors and followed me without question. I looked back at him. I am exactly where I belong. He didn't argue. He just blinked. For the first time, I saw it the crack. Not in me, in the story they'd built, the myth of the perfect family, the erasure of the inconvenient daughter. The silence I had once accepted had become the loudest truth on that ship. And I wasn't hiding anymore, but I hadn't even reached the deepest cut yet. And it was waiting in an envelope I didn't know existed. The morning after the navigation glitch, the Aleliner Blue moved like a thought held in silence, smooth, deliberate, just barely audible beneath the tension that clung to the hallways like fog. At breakfast, there was no music, no laughter. Celeste sat alone, cradling her tea, like it might tell her what to do. Edward hid behind a newspaper whose pages trembled in his hands. Henry was nowhere in sight. No one talked about what had happened. No one had to. But something else was coming. I returned to my quarters mid-morning and found a message waiting in my inbox. Naval Reserve HQ. Subject line request for contract extension. I opened it, read it twice. Your recent leadership and operational integrity aboard the Eleanor Blue has been observed. We would like to discuss extending your command partnership under a new initiative. Attached was a detailed proposal, something I dreamed about in fragmented sketches and private hopes, converting the Eleanor Blue into a full-time maritime leadership academy. Not for the elite, but for youth from forgotten coastal towns, where opportunity doesn't dock often. It was bold, visionary, and for the first time it felt fully mine. No legacy strings, no borrowed spotlight, no staged praise, just purpose. I printed the file and laid it on my desk, and that's when I saw it. A thin, time-worn envelope tucked beneath the stack of maintenance schematics, yellowed, edges curled, written in delicate cursive, "For your eyes only, Mom." My breath caught. That handwriting, I hadn't seen it addressed to me in over a decade. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside a single-page letter, ink faded, lines careful but heavy, words that hit harder than any storm I'd ever sailed through. "Alana, your father didn't want me to sign your Navy application. He said it would upset Henry, said it would damage his sense of place if you ever rose higher. When you returned with honors, he asked Celeste to manage you, to make sure you never unsettled the family image again. I never agreed, but I didn't fight, and that's the part I regret most. I'm sorry. Mom." I read it twice. The silence that had always shadowed me now had a signature. It wasn't just that I'd been excluded. I had been strategically erased because I disrupted the hierarchy, because I wasn't pliable, because I didn't make the men feel taller by shrinking myself. The storm in my chest built slowly. Not rage, not tears, just clarity. A kind of quiet heartbreak that comes when truth finally stops hiding. That evening, I found Margaret, my mother, alone in the ship's tea lounge, porcelain cup in hand, stirring a spoon long after the tea had gone cold. She didn't flinch when I sat across from her. "You wrote it," I said softly, placing the letter on the table between us. She didn't deny it. She just nodded. "You got it," she murmured. "Why now?" I asked. Her shoulders slumped. Not dramatically, just enough to reveal the weight she had carried, or refused to. "Because I thought silence protected us," she said. "I thought keeping peace was more important than confronting power. I studied her not as my mother, but as a woman who made a bargain and lived long enough to regret it. Your silence," I said, "is why I no longer want a seat at your table." She blinked. No defense, no excuses. Just the sound of the ship's engine filling the space between us. By the time I left, I knew something had cracked. Not in me, in the choreography, the polished script they'd rehearsed for years, but the fallout hadn't finished falling. By noon the next day, whispers had started. Henry had gotten wind of the Naval Reserve proposal, and true to form, he didn't respond with inquiry. He responded with rage. At the family's midday briefing, a tradition I'd never once been invited to, he made sure everyone heard him. "She's hijacking the family's legacy," he shouted, holding up a printed copy of the contract proposal. "She's turning our ship into a damn boot camp for strangers I will sue." I stayed seated, calm. I didn't override anything I said. I executed authority granted by the ship's charter. You'd know that if you'd ever read it. The room fell still. Celeste looked away. Edward straightened his tie and didn't say a word. For once, no one jumped to Henry's defense. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone to. This wasn't about acceptance, it was about truth. And I was done asking permission to speak it. But Henry wasn't finished. Not yet. And the storm he unleashed next would push everything to the edge. The email came just before dawn, buried between system updates and Tide reports. Subject: legal action filed. Body: you are hereby summoned. I skimmed the text once, then again slower. Henry had done it. Filed an official lawsuit accusing me of technical overreach, breach of trust, and disrupting a family-owned legacy. His wording was bloated, desperate, and laughably misinformed. But what caught me wasn't the audacity. It was the timing. He filed after the letter, after the course correction, after my proposal started gaining traction. He wasn't protecting the family name, he was protecting his illusion of power. That night, a knock echoed on my cabin door. It was Celeste. No makeup, hair pulled back, face bare in a way I'd never seen. Not vulnerable, just honest. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't even meet my eyes. Just held out a black USB stick and whispered I wasn't going to pick sides. But I can't let him bury the truth anymore. Then she left. I plugged it in. Didn't blink. It wasn't a surprise, just confirmation. Inside were repair invoices, financial reports, maintenance logs, all of them doctored by Henry. He'd been siphoning ship funds into private ventures for years, a yacht in Croatia, a paper-only consulting firm, even fake crew hours. He hadn't just ignored the family legacy, he'd been bleeding it dry. The next morning, I found Celeste on the maintenance deck. She was sitting alone, hugging her knees, watching the sea like it might give her courage. I used to think you just liked making noise, she said quietly. But now I see you were trying to survive. You were just brave enough to do it without asking anyone's permission. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "That's the difference between us. I wanted freedom. You wanted approval." She nodded, and for once she didn't defend herself. That afternoon, the hearing took place in the ship's lower lounge. No judge, no jury, just legal counsel, trust board reps, and a handful of longtime investors. Henry walked in first, smug as ever, until I started presenting. One by one, I laid down the documents like anchors. The original ship charter, signed by my grandfather, federal training clearance under my name, letters of commendation from the Naval Reserve, the official proposal to convert the Eleanor Blue into a maritime training platform, and then I slid the final file across the table, marked Confidential Henry Gentry. Inside, falsified logs, shell company deposits, ghost crew rosters, all time-stamped, all irrefutable. Henry's face paled. He looked down at the papers like they might vanish if he stared long enough. "You ruined my reputation," he muttered. "You embarrassed me." I leaned forward, voice steady. "You did that all by yourself. I just gave you the mirror." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Margaret, my mother, placed her hand over Edward's, stopping whatever weak defense he'd been about to offer. Her voice cracked as she looked at me. "I used to believe daughters should stay quiet. That silence kept things in place. But I see now, my silence gave rise to men who believed you were lesser." She turned to Henry, firm. "Enough, Ed. It's time you listened." An uncle cleared his throat. "If Alana's the one keeping the ship running, why have we been treating her like a ghost?" Murmurs followed. Some nods. Something was shifting. Not all at once, but like a heavy curtain being slowly pulled back. I didn't stay for dessert. Didn't need to. I gathered my documents, folded them into a black binder, and stood. "I didn't come to reclaim a seat," I said. "I came to end the fiction you've all co-authored about me. If you want the truth, don't ask the loudest voice. Ask the one who built the ship." And then I walked out. No one stopped me. No one could. Because for the first time, the ship was mine. Not just by law, by truth. But even after the storm cleared, one question lingered: was healing still possible? And could family be rewritten, not erased? Exactly 1 week after the legacy dinner, a letter arrived. Thick cream stationery, blue ink, handwritten, no return address, just my name in elegant, looping script. Alana. Inside a single line. "If you still have even a thread of trust left for me, meet me and Celeste on the Eleanor Blue. No speeches, no meetings, just the three of us. One time, I read it twice, then packed a small canvas bag. This time, I didn't board as an officer, not even as a captain. I boarded simply as a daughter and a sister. The ship was quiet that morning. Soft clouds, slow waves, the kind of day that held its breath. Margaret stood on the upper deck steps, slower now, but gaze steady. She handed me a thin folder, inside sketches, old journal pages, drawings from when she was younger. I wanted to be an artist once she said voice low, before I chose silence over chaos. I painted over my truth. But you chose truth from the start. That's braver than I've ever been, and I'm proud of you. Even if I didn't always know how to say it, I didn't cry. But something inside softened. Celeste sat nearby, knees pulled to her chest, like a child waiting to be told it's okay. I used to think being in control made me strong, she said. Controlling the cruise, the image, the brand. But every time you showed up, I felt like the background character in my own story. I didn't reply, not right away. Instead, I walked to the simulator console, fired up the emergency helm training system. Take the wheel, I told her. I'll coach from here. She blinked, then nodded, stepped forward. Her hand shook, but she followed instructions. Reset protocol, tide sync, stabilization test. Not perfect, but intentional. Behind us, Margaret stood still. Her silence for once felt like support, not avoidance. As the simulation ended, Celeste exhaled, smiling through quiet tears. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. I didn't return for an apology. I returned to see if change was possible, and maybe to find out if I still had the strength to believe in it. 1 year later, Miami felt like a new place. I stepped out of my sunlit apartment wearing a navy polo embroidered with the logo Horizon Blue Survival Academy. The Ella Lahner Blue had been fully recommissioned, no longer a party yacht for curated memories, but a mobile maritime training hub. I wasn't her captain anymore, but I was still her architect, her blueprint. On my kitchen table sat a folded newspaper, headline Captain Gentry Building Bridges Beyond Blood. I didn't read the article. I already knew what it said. 2 of our training units had recently assisted in real-life rescue operations youth who once had nothing but were now saving lives. Later that week, someone at a leadership conference asked me, "Do you still talk to your family?" I smiled. Family, I said, is a complicated word, but if it means giving each other space to live honestly, then yes. I'm building one again, on my terms. Weeks later, a package arrived. No note, no sender. Inside a painting, oil on canvas, the Ella Lahner Blue bathed in morning light. At the bow stood the silhouette of a woman, head held high. On the back, a single line written in Sharpie. "Thank you for giving me the courage to live honestly." I hung it in my office right next to the weathered map from my first mission. Celeste didn't join the academy, but her fashion label now sponsors annual scholarships for young women in maritime careers. We don't talk every day, but every few months I get a text. Need help designing the next promo video. Sometimes I say no, other times yes. We never talk about the summit anymore. We don't have to. This morning I stood on the deck of our newest training vessel, smaller than the Ella Lahner, sleek, clean. Her name, Liberty Wake. I looked out over a group of new cadets, some scared, some cocky, all trying. Pulled off my sunglasses and said, "When the wind picks up, don't wait for someone else to save you. Learn to steer, then teach someone else." The camera panned wide, sea behind me, sun ahead. And in that moment, I knew I didn't just survive the storm. I became the captain of my own story. Sometimes legacy isn't something we inherit. It's something we reclaim, not through noise, not through war, but through the quiet, unshakable choice to live in truth. And truth doesn't need permission. It just needs courage. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to reclaim your worth in silence? Tell me, I'm listening. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There's more to come.